Hey guys, Spartan here, and this is a little list of things that, well, I could go over a whole bunch of things that I do like about the game, but I think it's more important that I say what I don't like about the game. Now, this isn't because I need to list, oh, negativity sells more. No, it's because if you know what is not right with a game, you can fix it. Like, you don't need to touch the things that are good. The things that are good are good. You are fine with them as they are. But I've got a list of a few things that I think would be most beneficial if they would change. I'm doing it on this screen because it's the easiest to. So, let me start with the Stygian candles, or whatever they are. You get these in the Intrepid Coast, and they take, you know, increasingly more candles to get. But the thing is, these are all basically negatives, opposed from the gaining more candles. But in the end, you're going to be losing more candles anyway because you have to pay to unlock them. Like, I'm going to compare this to going torchless in Darkest Dungeon 1. Like, let's compare the Stygian Blaze to that. So, this gives you less HP, which basically equates to enemies having more damage in almost every means. In fact, it's probably even a lot worse because it makes dots worse as well. Negative relationship chance and positive relationship chance minus is basically akin to having more stress because you get afflictions faster. On Meltdown, weaken and vulnerable, that's just basically reduced stats on Meltdown. On Resolute, crit is basically the only, like, upside to using this thing because of, like, Stygian Blaze, for example, you need 300 candles to get it. And it's just a whole bunch of minuses. Where in Torchless in Darkest Dungeon 1, yeah, the only real downsides were the enemy damage, accuracy, and getting ambushed. And a bit of extra stress damage. Other than that, it gave you, you know, decent amount of upsides. You didn't have to tend your torch. Sure, you could get a Shambler encounter randomly, but that's, you know, that's probably the worst thing that could possibly happen. But you do get extra loot, which is, I guess, paralleled with this, getting extra candles, because it's loot in the long run of the game. However, it didn't cost you anything to go torchless. It in fact saved you money because you were never buying torches. And you could take advantage of going torchless by running a whole bunch of trinkets that had benefits if you have no light. And there was no downsides to using strong moves, such as Hands from the Abyss. No, not Hands from the Abyss. What's the other one? Yeah, Hands from the Abyss is the one. Which is a strong stun that the Occultist has. There's absolutely no downside to doing that in torchless, because the only price is the torch. And having to run Occultist in front, but he can work with that. It even makes enemies harder to kill because of the death blow resistance. Like, that doesn't apply on all enemies, but on the enemies that it does apply on, like the Knight, you can get screwed over royally by that. Like, Knight can wipe your entire team with this thing. You can kind of do that on his own, but, you know, in this, he stays around longer, and your heroes are easy to kill. So, these definitely need to be changed up. I haven't even bothered, like, playing with too many of these, but, like, the Hateful Pyre, for instance, can be, you know, it's kind of fair because enemies do get monster resistance and enemies get the advantage always. But you get maximum health, so it's like, yeah, as the flavor text says, battle and bloodshed, you fight more, or your fights are a bit harder, but you also get something to balance it out. Like, if all of these were free, for instance, then you may consider running this because it does give you a decent amount of candles. Sure, it makes it harder, but it makes up for that. There is just no upside to actually buying these things for extra candles. Like, the Doom candle makes you very easy to reach max loathing, which makes the boss harder. And yes, I've done the thing where you beat the final boss with the Stygian Blaze. It's not even particularly hard. It's just get your heroes to 14, like, not resolve level, basic affinity, and then you just beat it, basically. Sure, you won't get positive relationships anyway, but it means you can't get negative, so it makes up for the downside. So, yeah, it's just not fun. Next up is the pets. So the pets are... I think pets are a good mechanic. Unfortunately, I think the power level of the pets is too wild and varying to actually be anything that's like... Okay. So the main issue I have with pets is that a bunch of these... Okay, so first off, so when you arrive at the first inn, the Valley Inn, Torch and Crown, you get 3 pets, and there's 10 of them in total, meaning that there is a less than 1 in 3 chance of you getting a specific pet you want. So, like, let's say I wanted to do a run with the Shambler spawn, because it's a very goofy, weird trinket. You know, it counts as a Dark Embrace for your entire team. If I just wanted to do a run with this, I would have to go to the first inn, and then see if the pet was there, and if it wasn't, you just abandon mission immediately. Like, it's not a fun thing to do, and when you want to have fun, the thing of, like, having to reset repeatedly just until you get lucky enough to actually grab the pet that you want, it's just not a good mechanic. Like, just give us all 10 pets, because, like, the only issue with this would be, oh, you're just going to pick the same pet every time, and if that's the case, balance the pets. Because, quite frankly, the reason in my playthrough I only got the first 3 pets is so that I could consistently get Orphan Wolf Cub, which is the first pet you unlock, and honestly, it's probably the best, because late in the game, you can just get plus 20% stress res on your entire team, and 10 extra % positive relationship chance. This snowballs hard. It means that you pretty much do not have to worry about stress most of the time. Like, sure, you can still be hit by howls and things like that, but, you know, 20% chance if you've maxed out on luxury gear, which there is plenty of luxury gear. There's like 8 pieces in total, so it's not that unlikely that you can get at least 4 in a run, especially if you start with like Merchant's Guild Seal to get better prices so that you can easily buy, like, I don't know, T-set. You could find a spacious strongbox in the Sluice. This is free if you can get it, and you probably won't be taking it off ever. Trinket Organizer, you get that early in the run. It snowballs hard because it makes it much easier for you to get trinkets that you need. Wind Chime heals stress. Work Table Loom, this can give you plenty of milk-soaked linens, which are really good combat items because they prevent blind. Strongbox is good too, like, they're so good. And Orphan Wolf Cub has no downside, it's the first one you unlock, so it's the only one you actually need. Like, you compare this to this, which is 5% debuff res piercing. Yeah, debuffs can be good, and there's very low amount of things that actually give debuff res piercing because so many things apply it. So this is kind of nice, but you need Tinker's Gear, which... Okay, let's see, what Tinker's Gear do we have? Chance to produce traps, which, okay. Chance to produce contraptions, okay. That's also decently good. We have... I'm sure we have plenty more. Chance to produce explosives. And I believe there's... Yeah, a say here. Extra quality of looted relics. This one's actually really good, so it's sad for that going for it. And +1 quantity of items produced from stagecoach items. And I think that's it, yeah. This does nothing on its own. Keep that in mind. So, yeah, there's also a lot less of benefits, like less items you can even equip to buff some of these. Like, the most amount you can get is 8 from food gear or luxury gear, which Reanimated Rabbit is also pretty good. But you don't need the 4 speeds particularly. It's useful, but other than Food Barrel, you don't need to particularly stack too much. Like, Shrieger Chick also is kind of nice, but debuff res can be really good, but unfortunately, road gear in this game is actually really bad. Like, steel plating is just extra maximum armor, and sure, you heal 1 armor upon getting this, but if you buy this and equip this when you have full armor, you need to then repair your stagecoach 1 point so that it goes up to 5 entering the region in order for you to keep the armor status. Like, if this made it so that, like, oh, when you have 2 or 3 armor, it's like if you have upgraded the armor in the stagecoach area, the Intrepid Coast, then you had the protection buff. Like, you could take 2 hits and still have the protection buff, then it would be good. Same with the Iron Banded wheels, but it doesn't do that, so it's not very good. Iron Brazier is okay, you know, Traveling Flame Drain is nice, Leaf Suspension is kind of good, and Wagon Jack is... Listen, if you're running, like, the other stuff, you don't need Wagon Jack. Like, Wagon Jack would be maybe okay on its own, because you wouldn't really care about, like, simple road fights when you have all 4 turns. But yeah. Pygmy Pliskin is luck-based, because, you know, medical gear is nice, but you don't need too much of it. Listen, I'm not here to judge the viability of every single pet. All I'm saying is Orphan Wolf Cub is the best, followed by probably the Rabbit and then the Shambler Spawn. Next up, this is exclusively for the Slewers. The fact that you can't control the torch means that a whole bunch of these trinkets are completely useless. Like, apply on crit if flame is less than 40, daze, and if target is stunned, so you like daze an enemy, then you stun them with the second state daze proc. That's kind of fine. But a whole bunch of these just don't do that much. Like, instance, Goading Gargoyle is a good example of the opposite, where its base effect is really good, because it just converts blind to strength, so it's not just giving you an extra 50% chance to hit effectively, it's also giving you an extra 50% damage. And you don't need the speed to do anything like that. Like, Peculiar Pods is nice. I mean, sure, you can't control the flame, but the debuff Rose Piercing, this is like the only trinket that gives you debuff Rose Piercing that isn't locked to a specific character. This is one of the best trinkets in the game. But yeah, you get stuff like Gain on Crit, Stealth, if Torch. Like, look at this for instance. Apply to attacker when hit. If flame is less than 40, daze, a 33% chance. And then if an enemy has daze, you get debuff res. Like, who designed these? Like, sure, Vanish Vanity. You notice the ones that give you debuffs when the torch is high are much better than the ones that give you benefits when the torch is low, just because you can't control it. Like, if you let the torch go down too low, then there's a chance that it'll just go out. So, yeah. And even then, it's... like, the only way you can actually reduce the torch on your own is to stall out fights, specifically. And that sucks. Stalling sucks. Another trinket issue I have in this game is Hoarder trinkets. Now, it's not obvious that this is the case, but there are some trinkets that can only be bought from the Hoarder. And those include things like Thrilling Tablet. They include the Fate's Foreteller and Skeleton's Sight. These are, you know, they're trinket. They're Hoarder trinkets. Like, they just say indelible, but you can only get, like, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one from the Hoarder, for instance. And it's weird that these trinkets just can't show up anywhere. You have to buy them, and, like, nobody is going to buy Mortal Ward, for instance. Like, do you want a crit and super dodge and 2 stress minus on entering Death's Door, or do you want, like, actually something that'll keep you alive? Like, these would be kind of good. Like, that and Thrilling Tablet for some reason. Like, just getting these randomly could be really fun, but you cannot have fun. You have to buy them from the Hoarder, who he charges 65 baubles for character ones, and I think it's like... No, I think he charges 65 for just any indelible trinkets. And the fact that his inventory comes with like 6 of them, or 7 of them, means that, you know, his inventory can be clogged with these, which you're not always going to want. You probably want character trinkets, which obviously he should probably have a bigger supply, but that you need a stagecoach item for that. Just the fact that these always appear in his inventory too, it's kind of annoying. Like, the only one I would actually buy is like Sparkle Ball, because even if you buy Thrilling Tablet, that's, while fun, it's planning for failure, which you never want to do. Next up is diseases. So, there really isn't any consistent way to cure diseases in this game. Like, sure, there's the hospital, but there's a good chance that, you know, you cannot actually take a hospital if you are trying to beat the game. What I mean by this is, you need to go to a lair eventually if you're not playing on Chapter 1 to remove a disease. And if you get a disease mid-run from a zombie or something like that because they spawn everywhere, then if it's a really bad one, like cholera, which gives you days at the start of every round and reduces the healing you receive from skills by 50%. Like, this is awful. You need to get that removed as fast as possible, otherwise that character, there's a good chance they're just going to die from not being able to heal them off, you know, any damage. Like, if your tank gets hit by that, then you're kind of screwed. And you cannot even use, like, leeches, because this is an in item. This is the only way to heal diseases outside of, like, you know, going to a hospital or getting that one in that cures all diseases, or using, like, experimental remedy. I mean, peculiar pods also can too, but that's a trinket in the sluice. There's also a stagecoach item, but yeah, you cannot equip stagecoach items in the middle of a, you know, in the middle of a run. You need to do it at an inn. So diseases can just kill you very easily, and there's a very little chance of actually, like, surviving some of the worst ones, unless you specifically, like, coddle your team. It feels very unfun. I've said many times before that disease is like one of the worst mechanics in Darkest Dungeon 1, and it hasn't gotten better. At least in Darkest Dungeon 1, you could, you know, take that hero out for a week. You can abandon an expedition too if you needed to, if your hero's got a bunch of diseases. It's fine. But not only that, but actually buying leeches from a, you know, a pharmacy, a good old field hospital, it costs baubles. And that is what kills leeches, kind of. It costs like 35 baubles as well. So you could either get 2 of these, or you could get an indelible trinket which can carry you for like the rest of the run. Imagine if you cannot, like, get an indelible trinket because you had to buy leeches for planning down the road. That's a sad state of affairs for this game, but you know, it's something that you may have to do because diseases can just kill, and there's really nothing you can do about it. Going back to trinkets for a bit, one of the problems I have with this game is some of these trinkets, or actually no, most of these trinkets are really bad. And by that I mean it's the trinkets that don't have a specific area tied to them, like the Unwavering Standard, Stone Mount, you know, these 3 for instance. These all drop from the Tangle. You can kind of tell by how they look. Like, aside from Poison Ring, that drops from the fetter. It looks like a kind of tangle thing, but yeah. So these are all well and good except for Armory Key, but that's like a personal gripe. These trinkets that you can find anywhere kind of really, really suck. Like, turn end, you can get some speed. Like, you put this on like a tanky character that needs speed, and then maybe you get speed. Not very likely. It's less than a 1 in 5 chance of that. I think it's actually less than a 1 in 6 if I know my math correctly. And if you gain on miss, well, if you miss, you have a chance to gain days, which is actually higher than the chance of the upside. Like, these should be switched. Disarming Dagger is potentially, like, a source of weaken, but it's very unlikely to even happen. Like, these luck-based trinkets just really suck. Like, why would you ever run these? Aside from, like, Buttressing Band is probably the only good one. That's because just crits are so powerful, and it has a lower proc chance than any of the others. But this one's actually worth running just because of the power of crits. Like, even the downside is bigger than some of these. Yeah, look at that. Turn start, gain strength, but if you miss, then you gain weaken. Like, if these percentages were like maybe 30%, 33% is probably the minimum for me to actually run them. Because, like, you still have the chance to do the downside on missing, but, like, you run this with any character that tries to remove things with an AoE or something like that. You run this on Jester or someone, and you hit a harvest, try and remove a dodge token and a block token from a different unit, and you miss, and you give an enemy block. Congratulations, you've successfully done nothing. Like, even Dead Ringer. Ugh. Like, you compare some of those other things up there to, like, a Sharpness Charm, or even a minor Sharpness Charm. It's better to have 10% damage consistently. Even the speed can even help you sometimes if you're trying to set up turns. Like, you just get a rare one of these. It's honestly not that rare considering it can drop from anywhere. And it's just a straight up 20 damage. It's, like, much better than everything else there. The fact that you have to unlock these trinkets too before you get anything better, it's just diluting the trinket pool. But sure, it's like done in tiers, so it's gotten before the better ones, but still. Oh my, just... Has anyone actually bothered running any of these trinkets except maybe the disarming, the distracting dust? Because this one can actually be pretty good in situations, because blind is just such a good status effect. Like, does anyone actually run these until, like, no, not just until, while they have somewhat decent trinkets? Like, would you rather run the insulating insignia, so random ally on turn start can gain a 33% chance of block, or would you rather run the guarding gauntlet for... Sure, this one works on yourself, so in fact it's even worse probably than just putting this on a different hero. Like, this one has a higher chance of activating. Sure, this one's more controlled, but ugh, come on, man. Red Hook, please just buff these trinkets. Like, do something different with these. Like, make these a 50% chance of giving a stress, not just 100%. It's like these are not worth using. They're honestly garbage. Like, gain when missed. 5% chance of getting stunned. Like, stun is the worst stats effect in the game, obviously, so, don't want to run these, sorry to say. Now I'm going to end this on something very minor. If you click this, which shows your stats that you've done of the game, yeah, it doesn't tell you how many leagues you've traveled, which is... This is a very minor thing, but considering there is an achievement for traveling, like, how many leagues is it? 2,000? 20,000? It's some large number like that. Yeah, I'd love to see something that lets you track that. Because, yeah, it's kind of important if you've got an achievement based around a stat and you do not have anything that tells you what that stat is. Just letting you know. Feedback, yeah, this entire video. And yeah, I kind of want something to do with the pool of reflection because, like, you just dump your candles in and it's that's it. Total score. Who cares about total score? That's not a thing. But yeah, other than optimizations, like basic optimizations for the game, especially in the Tangle, because like you open the Living City and the game chugs a little as well. Like, open this and close it repeatedly.
Who have known fear and
that's a good example.
Ample portion.
Because yeah, the game sometimes chugs, but that's... I'm sure this will be ironed out later. And aside from enemies like Focused Fault and just a few outliners like Lady from the Feta, then basically everything else is pretty good, you know. Ordainment aside, like there should be something in the game that prevents like you getting 4 ordained enemies in the same encounter, unlike Region 2. But yeah, that's about it. So I'll see you guys in the next video that I do, whatever it is. Red Hook, if you're watching this, please consider fixing some of this stuff. But yeah, till then, goodbye.